All right, welcome to another segment of Beyond the Grassy Knoll. We have with us today Gordon Comstock.
Hi.
He's been on before, and I've been on his show. And we mutually, I guess, got together around George Orwell, the man, the myth, etc. And I had a chance to read Ian Slater's George Orwell, The Road to Airstrip 1. He's much more in depth about Orwell than I, and most people. And he picked that book up, and he fit that in, I guess, along with the information that he garnered from other books. And I guess somehow, some way, you do find what you believe is probably the most constant thread about what the person was. And with that, Gordon, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Now, how many books do you have, or have you read, that give some kind of exegesis about Orwell's work, and also may look biographically at Orwell or Eric Blair?
I've read probably 2 or 3 biographies, and 2 or 3 more of what are, Ian Slater, his book, The Road to Airstrip 1, he admits it's not really a biography, but in some ways it's more than that. It goes into his writing career and his motivations throughout his career, how they changed with each book and whatever career he did. So I've read 2 or 3 of those books that just go into his career and his motivations. And then as far as Orwell's writings himself, I've read all his major novels at least twice each, and his essays I've read at least twice each. The only thing I haven't read there's a book out there called The Lost Writings. I'd like to get that someday. When I discovered him, I want to make this straight. There's one true religion, and you and I are on board with that. But my introduction into Orwell happened when I was around the age of 30, because like most students in high school, especially government schools today, I didn't care, and because they were forcing the book upon me, I tuned out to reading anything by Orwell, even though I was introduced to it. So I didn't remember any of it, but when I decided to go back and be a English teacher...
oh, no, not that.
Yeah, my late 20s. And I had to... I did this crash course, took this crash course into all the literature that I never really paid attention to before. I was always good at writing and stuff, but I never really paid attention to people who actually wrote books. So at the age, my late 20s, I had to do this crash course. In about 8 months, I just jammed through every audiobook you could ever imagine as far as classic literature that I might be able to teach. I was lucky I had this mindless, repetitious cubicle computer job where I could listen to audiobooks all day. And the librarians, they were just amazed. They would say, "Here he comes again." Who's this guy? I was ordering audiobooks, just, War and Peace, and I'd go through it in 2 days. They just were blown away. Anyway, but when I encountered Orwell, that audiobook, the first time I listened to that, I got the goosebumps, and my whole body did, and it was. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I tell you it was like a spiritual experience. I don't mean like religious or anything. I just mean something that went to my soul, because I could sense that this was a man, the guy who wrote this, he had some kind of special information. To have written that 50, 60 plus years ago, and here was a man who was bleeding on the inside as he wrote it. And subsequently, in learning about his life, I've just confirmed that for myself. The guy was really in dire straits when he wrote that.
Are you saying that he was ill?
He was very ill, and his whole life had basically collapsed around him.
Let me ask you just at this point, hang on to where you're going, if you would. But I had wondered aloud when I did this, what takes the place of the old garage sales. And I was wondering why Orwell, knowing that he was ill and he had tuberculosis, is that true?
Yeah, for many years he did, yeah.
So he goes off to Jura, which is probably the worst place in the world for someone who's got his problems to go.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know. Well, here's what I wondered aloud: whether or not he went there because he didn't want to get a knock on the door and a visit, especially since I think he put himself pretty much in the crosshairs with Animal Farm. I wondered if he knew he was running out of time physically, and it didn't really matter where he went. Was seclusion what he yearned for? To that kind of atmosphere, the better to write in. So I don't. Or was he, was he trying to hasten his end and actually race his writing of the book with the end of his life? I don't know if that's important, but the choice to go up there just seems to be rather unwise considering. And yet there is some kind of indication that he was going to leave there, I believe, later on. In essence, when he left, he went to the hospital and died for the most part.
Yeah.
Why don't do you have any opinion on this?
Well, he and his wife, Eileen, had been intending to go up to that island of Jura for quite a while, for a number of years. I'd say at least 5 years. And his wife unexpectedly died right after World War II. This is the one area where Ian Slater, I felt, kind of dropped the ball. It was about his wife, Eileen, and the significance of having lost her. But anyway...
I don't really think he dealt that much with it, do you?
He spent 2 sentences on it.
Yeah.
And for that, I mean, Orwell wrote 1984 just a few years after, a couple of years after his wife had died, and his sister died like a year or two after that, and the guy had experienced, he was in a lot of grief over that. I mean, can you imagine losing a spouse?
Mm-hmm.
Come on. And then Ian Slater, in The Road to Airstrip 1, he devotes 2 whole sentences to that, like, oh, by the way, his wife Eileen died at this time. And then he goes on to claim, does Ian Slater, that Orwell really wasn't fatalistic when he wrote 1984, and he cites some letter that he wrote afterwards to a United Auto Workers, big muckety muck, saying how he had plans for this and that. If he could just get over his TB, he had these optimistic plans. Well, what I would say to Ian Slater is you're taking just a shallow view of human nature, which he doesn't do curiously through the rest of the book. He goes very well into depth and has great insight into Orwell elsewhere. But I think when Orwell was writing 1984, he was fatalistic. He was suffering through personal grief from deaths in his family, and also he had seen the collapse of his goal of socialism, which at that time a lot of authors were into that. Jack London, Upton Sinclair. You had these idealists who really thought that socialism would work. And you and I know that there is no economic system that works apart from Jesus Christ. But these guys didn't know that, so, I mean, it was in some ways a noble goal, but it was a march of folly also. But Orwell really busted his tail more than anybody else I could think of to further the goal of socialism, to try to help people, really. The guy, more than other people I've studied, had a heart of gold. His work, just like all of our works apart from Christ, are filthy rags. But if we want to just compare filthy rags, just to indulge us, his filthy rags were a lot cleaner than most people. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so his goal of he busted his tail to pursue socialism to the point that he, for long periods of time, adopted poverty by choice. So that he could promote it and to know what it was like, so he could write books about it, to then promote it, to not promote poverty, but to promote the state of poor people and why we should help them out. But then he saw what Stalin did to socialism, and he saw that I think he pretty much came to the conclusion that there may be no hope for socialism. There's no hope for a system of government, because you're always going to have some evil megalomaniac coming along and pervert it.
Well, even today, it comes with every generation. I would assume, and that a lot of folks do embrace the platitudes in socialism. And I had a foreign student at St. Leo when I was still there, telling me how nasty and rotten capitalism was, and how socialism looked like the way to go. And I said to her, well, why is that? She goes, well, everybody gets treated equally, and that's when I, let out the quip, equally like dogs.
Yeah.
So they don't get the whole picture. Secondly, they always seem not to include in the equation that the flesh is corrupt, and sooner or later, any system that even starts out with the best of intentions and may actually achieve it will be corrupted by a nasty group, which does not have to be that large, but they're usually powerful because of money and other forms of power.
Well, who's going to be in charge of distributing the goods? There's your king.
Well, yeah, you have to have decision makers. That's the other thing. Not everything can be by committee because you'll never get anything done. Yeah. So you do have certain people who usually take the fore in the decision-making process. Now, of course, you can submit that to everyone else's approval, blah, blah, blah. But still, this idea about socialism and these other New Age, now that we call New Age ideas, and systems of what they consider benign government, always preclude the usurping of authority by a nasty, rotten, evil oligarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And that has happened time and again throughout history, and that's why I said to some folks, why do you think it's going to work this time? It never has before. Would I like it to work like that? Absolutely. But I know better now, and I think that's what happens to a lot of folks when they get into their 50s and 60s. They look back and said, it was a bag of rocks after all, wasn't it? This bit about chasing, high tower ideas and sunshine, equality for all. So go ahead, I'm sorry, Gordon.
You hope that by that time people would wake up. Even then, I think it's a small minority who do.
Well, I mean, Orwell, again, how many phases did he go through? How many faces?
And that gets back to your question about why he went to the island of Jura, the worst climate for his TB. It was Eileen and his plan to do that, and then when she died, he kind of wanted to do it. Ian Slater writes about this. He kind of wanted to do it just to honor her memory. It's like, you wanted to go up there with me. You're not here now. The hell with it. I'm going anyway. I'm going even without you. They did have an adopted son at the time too, and so maybe it wasn't as fatalistic as to why he went there, but on the other hand, he knew his health situation, so maybe it was. I'm saying that he was so grief-stricken personally, and his visions for a better society were shattered. I think during the writing of 1984, it is such a dark book. It is the darkest work of fiction I've ever encountered, and it is legendarily dark. And I think he was fatalistic when he wrote that. I think he was grief-stricken. But then, Slater is probably right, though. I mean, people go through phases. I think Orwell, after he wrote it, even though he was very sick, he could have been more optimistic, and he could have come out of his period of grief. I could see that. But Slater doesn't take that into account, that people do go through phases.
Well, I never thought too much about Orwell either. I mean, how many of any of us who have read one or two of his books, and that's usually going to be, if not expressly going to be, Animal Farm in 1984. I mean, how many
really
of us
missing out if they stop there? Oh, wow.
Well, I did, but I appreciate what you said, and I believe it's true. But not many of us knew much about him. I can't even remember how my English teacher broke down, the background information before we got into 1984. One of the other things I have to say I feel badly about, but it was the way it was, and that is in my senior year I already knew in the second half of the year that I was going to pass, because we were on a point system, and I'd already knocked that off.
Oh, that's how it is with seniors, I know.
Yeah, and secondly, I already signed it on with Fairleigh Dickinson. I had a full ride waiting for me. And you know what happened is, after 13 years of public education, or at least at that time 12 and a half, I was sick of it. I was sick of everything. I didn't even want to go to college, except they were going to pay for it. And if I didn't go to college, I was going to Vietnam.
I hear you.
So the thing is, I mean, I missed 1984 really in entirety, and also Brave New World. I was like, get this out of here. And this is an aside. This is the worst of all. Like in the last 2 months, she decides to tackle Chaucer's Tales.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are you serious? I don't even want to read straight English, let alone Middle English.
Not good timing. That wasn't a good plan.
No, she was a nice woman, too, and actually one day she gets so upset with me because I was the ringleader of this coterie of, disaffected youth.
Yeah.
And she said, I go, look, you're a great teacher. You really are. I'm going to tell you right now, I hate this system. I'm sick of it. This is just the time when I've had enough and I want out of here. I know it's a lot.
Oh.
And she said, you know what she said to us? She goes, okay, I tell you what. Fair enough, I understand. I said, it's not you, Mrs. What was her name? Rushby. I said, not you, Mrs. Rushby. I said, not at all, and I'm sorry. I've been rude to you. I said, but I don't want to hear it anymore. I've had enough. And she understood. She said, okay, I tell you what. You guys go in the back. Keep it down. And what you get is what you get. You understand it? I said, I understand that. And we let it go with that.
Good for her. Yeah. You had a really understanding teacher there.
Yeah, she was. She was very sentient. And actually to the point where we almost thought we were giving her a nervous breakdown. I mean, we weren't wise guys. We weren't there anymore. Do you know what I mean? We were sitting there, but we weren't there. And it was rude to her. And I understood that. But after that situation occurred, we were good to our word. She was good to her word. And like I said, it's not you. It's not you, it's the system. And I'm sorry, but I've had enough, and I can't apologize for it.
The system totally takes away the quest, the adventure of finding your own books you want to read. They force an entire class to read one book at a time. That's not how the process of discovery, of learning, works.
No, I mean, we've always had reading lists, and they got a little more liberal, I will admit, as I went through school. So you can make a choice. Some things were definitely mandatory. And I think I would have been okay with that. But in that weird senior year, especially when you're not hanging on till the last semester to find out whether you're going to graduate or not, you better front load the curriculum or the syllabus or whatever with the heavy stuff. Do not.
For seniors especially.
Yes, for seniors. That's what I'm talking. Don't. After January,
They're so tuned out. I know.
Viz is gone. Viz is gone fishing. So, at any rate, I digress. But what I'm saying is, I never did have, a background on Orwell. I just, there's that one photo you see all the time. He looks a little bit saturnine.
Oh, his temperament was totally saturnine. He was a dour individual. But again, on the inside, he was a really hell of a good guy. In earthly terms, in secular terms only, I know.
Right now, I'm only dealing with Slater's book for the most part.
Yeah.
And like I said, I thought chapter 10 and 11 had the really good stuff. But
you're right, it did, yeah.
But it did show me that here's a guy that was a work in progress, and not he wasn't just dabbling with giving speeches and play acting socialism, standing on a soapbox, in Kensington Square or whatever. But he goes down to Spain, and I think he probably ducked more bullets than Hemingway did.
Oh, well, he got shot in the neck and was a millimeter away from death.
There you go. He wasn't driving any ambulance.
And he writes about that in the book he wrote on that, Homage to Catalonia.
Right.
He spends a couple of pages on what it's like, on his experience being shot and then in the hospital. And he writes about it with such marvelous understatement. It's like, so this is what it's like being shot in the neck. It's like, oh, man, a millimeter away from death, and he doesn't make a big deal out of it in the book at all. It's incredible. This guy was a gutsy guy.
Well, he must have realized, too, as he's gone through these phases of socialism on the European continent, that, you know what, this ain't working either. Now, Slater kind of was critical, and perhaps rightly so, that Orwell doesn't give us any solutions. And I would say, well, maybe, Ian, because there aren't any, and that's the way yeah. And I, if I were in Orwell's shoes, I'd say, let's just call in the dogs, pee on the fire, and get on up to Europe, because there is no way out of this.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and so you could see through at least what Slater broke down, that there was a man that was changing, and radically and deeply, and for good reason, until finally, what I think probably, and I'm going to ask you about this, Gordon, take it away, but I'm wondering if his experience with the BBC, might have just soiled his soul enough where it was like, I know where this is going. I understand the blueprint. I actually worked for the Ministry of what? Propaganda, they called it?
Yeah, and his wife was high up in the censorship department of the BBC, yeah.
And after it was like, I'm out of town. What do you think? I mean, do you think that experience with the BBC was the coup de grace somehow, some way, where he just said, look, I got to get out of here, and probably maybe even make some recompense?
It may have been, because his first experience with drastic and obvious media manipulation, media control, was when he volunteered to fight in Spain. Can I give you
Sure.
a quote from that?
Yep.
When he went into Spain, he fought on with a band of anarchists, basically, but they were fighting with the other socialist side against Franco. But then, and he was shot in the neck, and he almost died. But when he finally recovered, and then he had to escape. Even after he recovered, the government was after him because his side was losing, and they had become suppressed, and they were being thrown in jail without any trial or anything, and just to rot and die in jail. And so the government was after him, and so he had to. It's an adventure story reading about that in homage to Catalonia, how he barely got out of the country, out of Spain. But when he got back to England, he saw in reading the papers, and I suppose, in Spain he would be reading English papers also, but he saw the deliberate and gross lies in the media. Let me just give you a quote here. Okay, this is Orwell from Homage to Catalonia. Early in life, I had noticed that no event is ever correctly reported in a newspaper. But in Spain, for the first time, I saw newspaper reports which did not bear any relation to the facts. Not even the relationship which is implied in an ordinary lie. I saw great battles reported where there had been no fighting, and complete silence where hundreds of men had been killed. I saw troops who had fought bravely denounced as cowards and traitors, and others who had never seen a shot fired hailed as the heroes of imaginary victories. And I saw newspapers in London retailing these lies, and eager intellectuals building emotional superstructures over events that had never happened. I saw, in fact, history being written not in terms of what happened, but of what ought to have happened according to various quote-unquote party lines, end of quote. When I read that quote, it just really made me think of the dumbhead Christian Zionists watching Fox News of anything that's happening or not happening in Iraq. But so he saw, because he actually went out and lived this stuff. He was there, and then he was able to come back and see the media reports on it. He saw how grossly deceitful the reporting was. And then during World War II, because he was very traditional, and so he had a patriotic side, and he wanted Britain to win over Hitler, though he was very critical of British rule as well. He recognized that Hitlerian and Stalin rule was much worse. So he wasn't physically able to fight in World War II. So he ended up getting a job broadcasting to India with the BBC, and because he had been a constable in India, as his father had. And he was, I think it did affect him. He wasn't there very long. He walked after a short period. He didn't finish out the war doing that, but he took part in the propaganda during that war, and it didn't sit well with him. It may have been just the last straw, and just like, what, why am I doing this?
Right, exactly. How do you look in the mirror? Also, I was trying to find where I got this from, but I can't even begin to trigger some memory of it, so I can go check it out with all the documents I might have. And that is, didn't he also fall out of favor with the Fabian Socialists?
Yeah, he wrote a book, The Road to Wagon Pier. Well, first of all, he fell out of favor with just the regular socialists. He the Road to Wagon Pier, where he went and lived as a miner and just in the most squalid conditions. But he did it for, gosh, it was at least 6 months. And the descriptions, he went down in the mines and all of that. He was very critical, though, of socialist intellectuals at the time who thought they had all the answers, and he pointed out how they really didn't. And even his publisher wrote an unprecedented disclaimer at the beginning of the book. And he began to anger socialists from at least that point on, if not before. And the elite, the Fabian socialists, he really, well, let me give you a quote. This is from Slater. Slater writes that it was largely the result of his experience in Spain that Orwell was to view the intellectuals with a deep and permanent suspicion. And that's Ian Slater from that Road to Airstrip 1 book. Orwell had a lot of connections. He knew H.G. Wells. He didn't get along with him, although Slater doesn't write about that, and neither does this W.J. West guy. He knew Maurice Webb and his wife, who were big in the Fabian Socialists, yes. And there is an interesting part in 1984. I think what drew attention to this for me, it's an essay online, and it might have even been Adam Gorightly who wrote it. There's somebody like him, but it might be him.
There's nobody like him.
Well, you're right.
All right, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But it's an article about 1984, and it talks about, gosh, I wish I could find it, but and it's online. There's a part in 1984 that to me it always did kind of stick out. It was a little odd. There's a part where Orwell, or the character Winston Smith, who in many ways, of course, is an autobiographical Orwell, he's watching somebody on the telescreen giving a political speech, and the guy has glasses on, and the guy's just parroting this government propaganda. And Winston Smith sees through it, and of course the rest of the people around him don't. But he describes the way the guy's spectacles, when he moves his head up and down, and the lights shine on the spectacles, it looks like he has no eyes because there's no brain in back of it. And the mouth is moving, blah blah blah. And then he goes into this thing where he says there's a term for it. Winston Smith thinks it's called duck speak, and there's a couple of duck references on that page again, talking about that character. And there's nothing else in the book about ducks and blah blah blah. And it's just a weird thing to throw in there. Why ducks? And it might have even been Gorightly, but this person who wrote this essay, it's kind of a stretch, but he says, is this Orwell taking a shot at the Webbs? Webbed feet, ducks.
Yes, indeed.
It could very well be. I mean, how else would he couch that in the book? He can't be very direct about it if he's going to criticize these big muckety-mucks and still get his book published.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't think he got along. He didn't get along with the Fabian Socialists. You don't find a lot, though, about his associations with them in any of the, of course, authorized biographies, just like you don't find hardly anything about his possible ties to MI5 in any of the authorized biographies, but there's all kinds of circumstantial evidence for both.
All right, let me stop you there now. With regard to MI5, how strong are the ties that any of the writers make?
Well, the one that gets into it the most is this book, The Larger Evils, 1984, The Truth Behind the Satire, by W.J. West. Let me show you what he's got.
All right, now, was Orwell ever accused of, shall we say, giving up certain individuals to the state? Yeah, and for being communists. Yes, he did. And right after World War II,
And he had some kind of, this is covered in The Larger Evils by W.J. West, he had some kind of a file, that normal file on people who could have been communists or was reputed to be. And it was one of those files, kind of like the Clintons stole, where normal people aren't supposed to have those files. In the Clintons' case, even they weren't supposed to have them. But so he did, that was one sign. He had all kinds of friends who were associated with MI5, or who were, in one case, a guy who was even with MI5. And in The Larger Evils, this W.J. West author talks about the house, the mansion that this guy lived in, not far from Orwell. It kind of matches up with the description of the character O'Brien's house in 1984, as far as the layout of it, and as far as the secrecy and the secret code names that were protocol. And then let's see, Orwell on his death, people going through his belongings. He was found with a revolver, the same kind that MI5 would have had. And, well, it's all circumstantial, but there's not a small amount of it, though. He knew people who were in those circles. And there's one other thing, though, too, in this book. Take this for what it's worth. This is contemporary. A CIA officer, contemporarily, he flat out told this W.J. West author that Orwell was a member of MI5. And he didn't, and the author asked him, "Are you sure?" And the guy said it was positive. The guy didn't recant it, but there was no proof exchanged, put it that way.
Well, now MI5 would be what the FBI is to the United States, with MI6 being what the CIA is supposedly.
And W.J. West makes the point that MI5 is what Orwell modeled the thought police after, because MI5 were the people in charge of censorship as far as searching through people's homes for illegal books. Oh, that reminds me, during World War II, when these searches were going on from MI5, this is covered earlier in the book, Orwell had, I think it was because he had mailed away for some Henry Miller books, and at the time Henry Miller, the author, was kind of very risque. And things like that, any kind of even porn was against the law, and or anything political, I suppose, too. But anyway, Orwell had his house secretly broken into and searched by, I'm not sure if it was MI5, but some police entity. And what happened after that, though, two things this W.J. West guy points to maybe being signs of Orwell's MI5 connections, or at least some kind of high connections. Orwell got a high-level apology letter from the police, and Orwell was not, he had these books that were against the law, but he was not prosecuted at all, which apparently was unusual for the time. And so those two things make you kind of think, there's a lot of fishy stuff going on with this guy. Orwell, on the one hand, he was very open. All his flaws, he was a regular guy as far as he let his thoughts be known and his thought processes, and so you see his flaws and contradictions, unlike guys like Wells and Huxley, who were like robots and thought they were perfect, and so they hid all their flaws, elitist scum. But on the other hand, Orwell, I think he had this secret side. Just a really enigmatic guy.
I'm just wondering, though, after all was said and done, when he got himself off to a nunnery of his own making, which would be Jura, I wonder if he just was also looking for expiation and found that in writing 1984.
I see where you're going. Yeah, that could very well have been.
Hey, listen, at this point, let's just stop and say we're talking with Gordon Comstock. The website is ministryoftruth.com. And,
GordonComstock.com.
You have GordonComstock.com as well?
That's the one I have. Gordon, ministryoftruth.com was already taken.
Oh, but you do? Okay, so, all right, dumbhead me. All right, so...
GordonComstock.com, yeah.
And when you get to the homepage, it says Ministry of Truth.
Yeah.
I never even look in the URL anymore. Honest to goodness, I don't. So when you give me a link, when you're posting something lately, like the stuff from, what was it in the movie? The one with...
Oh, man. When you get attuned to this stuff, you start seeing it everywhere. Movies with Masonic symbology embedded in it. It was in a Disney movie, that movie Heavyweights. There's a couple of pretty blatant Freemasonic references.
Well, the comedian, of course, I don't know if it was more dialogue than a visual.
Ben Stiller.
Yeah, wasn't he involved in something in that movie with regard to that?
Yeah, Ben Stiller and his longtime comedian parents. They make a reference to 32 and 33 degree, and it's pretty obvious it's Freemasonry. And there's another reference to I want to show you the light. That's like the mantra of Freemasonry.
Well, of all occult, it's all about the motif of light.
Yeah. And they used the lamest excuse to be able to get that in there. His father was supposed to be a lamp selling mogul, and so he replaced all the new lights in this summer camp. Oh man!
Well, and by the way, you can see that on Gordon's website. And I apologize if the Ministry of Truth, but that's what I always see when I pull up the homepage. But Disney, from the time when Walt began it, always had a little thread of occultism going through it.
That's what I've heard, yeah.
Well, you can take a look even in when he has, Mickey in the...
Fantasia.
Fantasia is...
Yeah.
Oof. I tell you what, that one segment, Bad Night at Ball Mountain, I remember looking at that when I was, in the late 50s. And it although it was beautiful, it was tremendous animation. It was dark, and it left me, one of those things when you're a kid, it's like, okay, this is make-believe, isn't it? When the mountain unfolds and all the demons come out and all this stuff, holy mackerel.
Yeah.
But even now, I just got an email from Andy Sr. lamenting that, I guess, two members of his wife's family are, completely hooked into this Hannah Montana thing. And he was just saying about how, the mind-op with Disney continues. And so what you just mentioned also with Stiller and stuff, I mean, they're also weavers of fantasy, and they're also the wavers of the wood of the holly. And, Walt definitely was up there, and that part is continuing. Our friends might blame it on the Jews, but Walt was right there at the very beginning.
Yes,
in the 30s.
The entirety of Hollywood must just be loaded with Masons, because once you're in tune to this stuff and you start seeing it, you just watch a movie and then you hear something or you see something and you do this double take like, no way, is that another little sign? So they're in there. They put them in there.
And again, this is treated to a certain degree on Gordon's site, GordonComstock.com. If we anything else too, by all means, if you want to alert folks to what's on the website. And you're also involved in a bit of a loosely connected network, aren't you? I'm saying that because
Yeah, it's not really a network, because it's just kind of an amalgamation of
like-minded people, you would say, or like-spirited,
like-minded Bible-believing podcasters who are awake to the political realities of the world around us, unlike the majority of Christians. And I'll tell you, the guys I listen to most right now online, I grew up a big talk radio listener, and now that's all gone. It's a wasteland of propaganda. But thank God for the internet for now. But even then, then I graduated, as you know, to the so-called Patriot networks, and that did me for a while until you, thank you for weaning me off of those corrupt entities. But now I'm left basically because I got to listen to stuff. I mean, I'm an audio learner. I will listen to the King James Bible, and then if I'm not going to do that, I'm listening to your show. Or I'm listening to Randy Moggin's, the Threshing Floor Ministry, because, boy, is he ever awake to what's going on. There's another guy in New Jersey. I hope you can have him on your show one day. He's a younger guy,
Jack?
Frank Lordy.
Okay.
He was doing SalvationRevelation.com, and now he's kind of He's changing the name, the format of it. But the thing I'm struck with listening to you and Randy and this Frank guy is how much more articulate you guys are than me. There's a little bit of TC in me, and that's an old reference, but you know what I'm talking to. It takes me forever to get my thoughts out.
Okay. Well, all those thoughts he does get out. You can find on that website. And what are you doing as far as broadcast schedules?
Oh, I'm doing one show a week. Once in a while I can do two, but mostly it's one show a week, and I'll put it up late Thursday night or early Friday morning.
Okay. All right.
So the audio page is what gets the most hits and what is the heart of the website. I also do book reviews, which need to be better organized. Right now they're organized as far as when I read them, but I'd like to organize them someday categorically, subject-wise.
All right. And right now we're talking about George Orwell, a.k.a. Eric Blair. I guess that should be the other way around. And a point I'd like to springboard off this second half of the show. Two things. One, do you think that the Fabian Socialists' involvement with Orwell or vice versa is also little known and little talked about or written about because he might have been basically ostracized, and so all that stuff is expunged, at least from their side of the equation?
I would suspect that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense also. It's like, you were never here.
And it's like, if he was in MI5 or somehow working for them, would they ever tell us? No.
And you know what's interesting, too, is how would you place a timeline? His MI5 involvement, can you put a window on that, what years that might have been?
Yeah, I don't know. W.J. West doesn't do that either.
Was it pre-World War II? Or up
Probably not. If it was pre-World War II, it wasn't by much because he wasn't part of it in Spain. At least it strongly suggested that he was not. He wouldn't have been part of that in Spain, but he would have been known to any kind of British intelligence because of just by the fact of his having volunteered for something like that.
All right, I want to tell you an anecdote that I was privy to, but because it bears out how this could happen. Is it a possibility that he was also a mole, if you will, during the days he worked for the BBC? Because obviously you're getting a lot of information in there.
Yeah, W.J. West goes into that, yeah.
All right, and when did he get that famous visit, which was kind of comical, in fact, by two agents? I don't know if that was the MI5 or not. I forgot. You've got it. It's in Slater's book, where he had just gotten done with, I guess, Animal Farm, and he was getting a visit saying, "You're a little bit too hard on the Ruskies." Remember he got that visit?
No, I'm not recalling that.
All right, well, that's real interesting because I want to, if you can fix what year that is, and you'll find it, where he gets a visit from two agents, and they're like, yeah, could you probably change, blah, 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 and he's not going to change a thing. And they were really pretty funny. So he got a visit after the writing of Animal Farm. Do you remember what year Animal Farm was written?
He wrote Animal Farm in the middle of World War II, or 43, I think it was, but he couldn't get it published for a couple of years. It was too hot. Because
the Brits were, the main storyline or government line was that because it was too critical of Stalin and the Russians with whom the UK was trying to curry favor.
Well, that's one thing that drove him nuts and made him come up with Animal Farm was when he was fighting in Spain, and prior to that, in the British press, Stalin was, of course, the mass-murdering thug that he was. But then, when World War II started and they needed Russia for an ally, he saw the British press just do an overnight flip-flop, and suddenly it was Uncle Joe.
Well, let me share this with you because this is the way things really work. And if you don't think people in newspapers are giving up other folks, this is not anywhere near as nefarious. So let me just spit this out. In 1975, it's interesting. I was playing for a semi-pro team whose manager happened to be FBI, and we had one agent on the team, and later there would be two of us who would go into the Hoover building. And back in the early 70s, like 70 through 73, I had played for another semi-pro team whose manager was working in the New York Times. And laugh out loud about this, he was a co-worker of my wife's father, whom I would not meet for another, 10 years. So all roads lead to Kevin Bacon. But anyway, what happened was, I couldn't believe it, but the FBI guy tells me, "Oh, you played for so-and-so." And I said, "Yeah, you know." He goes, "Oh, yeah." He goes, "Yeah, he used to help us out at the New York Times." So here this guy is going through information and feeding it to the Bureau, whatever he can get his hands on from the New York Times. And I told this other guy who was bound for the FBI, he never made it to the academy. He's going, "I can't believe he told you that." But anyway, that's the way it is. Now, one of them is deceased. The agent might also be deceased now. But I mean, it was just one of these things where don't you ever believe that the government isn't into newspapers for what they can find out on folks as well.
Wow.
So, there you go. I mean, the reason I bring that up is because here's Orwell working in an information outlet and being tapped on the shoulder.
And he has all these mysterious ties to MI5, circumstantially at least, yeah.
So anyway, that's my war story, but that's the way things really work. So, to get an insight to that was kind of cool.
And yeah, there is a section, a couple of pages in this other book that talks about, there's one guy in the BBC working with him, he suspected that Orwell was a mole.
Yeah. Now, with all that he went through, and prior to the writing and perhaps a stimulus for the writing of 1984, I get the impression, let me throw this by you, that he realized that he got it. That no matter what system it was, whether it was his much-hated communism under Uncle Joe, whether it was supposedly benign socialism under whoever was running the show in the UK, or capitalism in North America, or at least in the United States, that all systems basically were rigged.
Let me give you a quote of his. This is from the Slater book. Orwell did see more clearly than most that totalitarianism is equally at home on the left as it is on the right. And here's a quote from Orwell. The two, meaning capitalism and communism, are rapidly evolving towards the same system, a form of oligarchical collectivism.
Hence the book inside the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he understood, yeah. Well, and here's the situation. I don't know how people are going to deal with it, but it has to be dealt with, or else they're going to go ahead and stay in the land of wishful thinking until they finally get dragged out of the house by their boot heels. And that is, all the systems are rigged. That's the way it's always been. And, of course, what I do here, and I think it's pretty well documented and validated, that, you know what, it's always been this way. Whether it was the creation of the United States or any other nation state, it's always been about the money. It's not been a place to bring your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. It's about opening markets, because the whole idea of mercantilism and the idea of human government is antithetical to Jehovah. That's what we got when we decided not to go by divine law. And that's a big chunk to chew, but that's just it. I'm sorry, if you're looking for human answers, you are in deep sneakers. And God knows God does know what people are going to do if they feel they have to, stay with the human construct when it gets crazy. Orwell probably did not have Christ, and did the best he could. But, I don't think there's a Malboge in heaven or hell where there is a place for virtuous pagans.
Well, that's one of the things that draws me to him. Here I am, a believer in Jesus Christ, and I really find myself admiring this non-believer.
Mm-hmm.
The guy was a stud, I got to admit.
Yeah.
His intuition was incredible, because just in reading parts of this Ian Slater book, I mark up all my books now. I dog-ear them. There were parts where I marked, like, Orwell's describing what's coming, what he senses coming, sees coming politically, and it seems like he is snuffing out the coming of the Great Tribulation. There's another part where he's talking about media control and the deception people are going through. It seems like he's snuffing out, he's smelling the coming of the strong delusion that the Bible warns about. So in his non-believing status, he had great intuition as to where the world is going, and it really matches up with what the Bible talks about is coming, and that's really part of what gave me the goosebumps back when I was 30 and introduced myself to 1984 and Orwell's writings.
Well, I'm going to hold you right there, and we're going to do more than one show on this. So I was going to ask you for a second if we could, because of what you just said now, I'd like your take on what I'm going to posit, okay?
Yeah.
I did this in these days, Volume 1. That's in the audio archives now.
Yeah.
And that is, I think Orwell was around enough to know what he had gone through, what it really was, and where the world was going. And I say that because, to me, whether you want to call it spiritual, and I think it is, there seems to be this scripted world wars of the 20th century. And we hear all this chatter, if you will, about World War III. Now, what I had said in these days is, a lot of folks, not everybody, talks about the Mazzini-Pike letter that there'll be a third World War. It'll be about extirpating Muslims and such.
Well, it'll be about extirpating monotheism and secularism.
Yeah. All right, now, okay, so that was written somewhere in the late 19th century.
Yeah.
Then, as I was going through, some of the folks that were foretelling the future, either geopolitically or through futurism, and they all come out of London.
Oh, yeah.
And so we have, as I had said, we have Mackinder, the first geopolitician who in 1904 broke out probably what would be the scenario for the last empire, hence World Island, hence the Heartland. Obviously, we've said it ad nauseum that Brzezinski played off that for his book, The Grand Chessboard. But we also have that very interesting individual, Robert U. Benson, who converted to Catholicism. It was on 9/11, in fact. When I said it to the Collins brothers, they all sit there and gag for a second. It's like, all right, guys, you don't have to buy into this. It's okay. But he writes Lord of the World. And in it, he sees a three-power fulcrum on the earth.
Yep.
And one of them included what he called the Eastern Empire, which was mainly China and Japan.
East Asia, yeah.
Yeah, so there you go. So you've got Mackinder seeing that there would be two powers on the continent. I'm saying that still works out to be three because he didn't talk too much about Europe or Great Britain and the United States.
Yeah.
So you still have a two-power thing happening on the continent, and that comes out to what? Russia and China, or Asians and Slavs, whatever you want it to be. So you've got Benson, you got Mackinder, and then you got Orwell, all talking about what looks like a three-superpower construct on the globe. Interesting that it all came out at the same time. Now, Orwell trails that somewhat because Mackinder came out in 1904. I believe Benson wrote his book in 1907 or 8. Mackinder came out in 1904. So what was going on that there was this, was it an understanding? Were these people prescient? It just looks like we know there's going to be a third one. And how do you know that? And what or whom are you guys tied into? That this would be so much agreed upon, if you will, from separate viewpoints. So, again, did Orwell know that there was going to be a third one?
I would really like to find out more on that. I think it would necessarily tie into what he learned from having been associated with the Webbs and with H.G. Wells, and you just don't find much literature on that, and gee, I wonder why.
Well, and the other thing, too, is Cecil Rhodes. And and his successors all believed it was the white man's burden to rule the world. And they also were very smarmy and obviously correct in saying they could bring in the dumb beast, the United States, to come in and fight the wars that their best blood no longer could. And that happened. And again, this is, Rhodes dies, I think, before 1910. And this is what his will was, which was later carried on by Lord Milner in his kindergarten.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's centered in London. I don't know expressly if it's the city of London, but in and around London, that these people would all come up with the same kind of thesis, I think. And I don't think that's a coincidence. And I think that speaks. I mean, the horrible truth of it is that this is all scripted, and there's another one to come down the pike.
Yep.
All right. The other thing, what's the matter?
I'm just thinking, it all comes out of London, and then there may be a ruler over London, and as you...
Oh, there is. It's
the I-Man.
Yeah, there's no two ways about it. The two power centers are the nation-state of the Vatican, and you can almost call it the nation-state, the city of London.
Yeah.
No, I'm not cutting them out whatsoever. In fact, what the I-Man also gave information to the effect that when he had his little income tax situation, it was interesting that the Vatican, which I just think is a front also, the Society of Jesus runs everything, but the Vatican and the Pope are much like the president and the cabinet. They put on in D.C. We don't make decisions here, but we're going to make you think we do. Yeah. And so what did the Vatican do? They went to the Attorney General of the United Kingdom to get I-Man out of the income tax system. Now that connection, I don't know how. What do you say about that? Unless somebody's going to say that I-Man's a liar, what do you say if you believe, and you should, that connection is true? The UK or the City of London has been our caretakers. They've been our handlers. They're the intermediary, and that's been going on ever since the Civil War, when finally the old world decided it was time to give us a kick upside the head and bring us into tow. So, a lot to be said, but I think that also shows is they used us as their hitman all through the 20th century. How else can you explain, our military fighting everywhere at all times? Oh, I know, it's exporting freedom to other people. That's right, I forgot. So.
The incredible thing to think of is that we may have been raised up all along for that specific purpose.
Well, you're preaching to the choir on that one, because that's exactly what I believe.
I'm reminded in the Animal Farm by Orwell, when one of the first things that Napoleon, the dictator pig, did when he took over was he kidnapped some puppies and raised them up to be his secret police. And it took quite a while, it took a while for them to be raised up and trained, but boy, as soon as he had them, he just sicked them on everybody, and it's not beyond the pale to think that the rulers in the City of London and their bosses could have raised this country up all along, profiting from it, with the express purpose of being their policemen at a certain point.
Well, like I said, from Thunderdome, it reminds you of the Master Blaster Association.
Yeah.
With the UK being obviously the master and the dumb beast being the blaster, that's us.
Tina Turner being the Vatican, maybe?
Yeah. No, and we have no problem with that. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this segment to an end. I know you have a lot more, and we weren't going to try to shoehorn it into a 1-hour show. So what we're going to do is, probably get back together again, if that's okay with you, within a week or two, and do a follow-up. And also, if there's more to be had, I think there is.
One thing I'd like to tackle is there's this this mythology among patriots, American so-called patriots, who are not well read. There's a common perception that Orwell was a bad guy, and that's just not true.
No, and if he were somehow, some way, he was not. Here's where they get the idea of a bad guy, and that is that Orwell was really saying in his book 1984, this is a great thing that's going to happen to all of us.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. It was fully a warning, and that argument that later goes on, was it a warning, was it a prophecy? And I'm saying, well, what's the difference in a sense? A warning becomes a prophecy if it isn't heeded. Or even if it is heeded, if you can't turn it back, it will come into reality. And so, yes, that whole bad idea. I mean, remember something, too. I mean, my whole life in back of that book, I mean, I was at parties when I was like 5, 6 years old with my parents, you know, and people were always talking about Big Brother and laughing, oh, Big Brother, oh, you got to watch out, Big Brother. But that went on for decades. There wasn't a decade of my being aware that I hadn't heard that used, you know, as cocktail language, if you know what I'm saying, you know, suburban cocktail language. Oh, Big Brother. And it's like, you idiots, it's here, and they're still saying, oh, Big Brother. Holy mackerel. You know, it was one thing and it was far off in the distance, you know, in 50s and 60s. But, man, I mean, with Homeland Security and all this stuff, it's right in your laps, and people are still saying, oh, watch out, it could be Big Brother. Well, if it quacks like one, quacks like one, it's a wet. No, it's a duck. So, anyway, free association there at the end there, big guy. Okay.
No, it's all around us. That's the blueprint. 1984 is the blueprint for what's all around us now.
And your point's well taken about patriots and such, and thinking that's the case. But of course, you know, they're brainwashed also either, you know, inadvertently or advertently by talk show hosts who are now working up the whole fear thing and the martial law any day now and the police state and all this other stuff. And so, of course, that falls right into it. And as I-Man said, you know, the patriots will only go so far in research or what they want to read or believe, so long as their schema is proved right. They won't go any further if it turns out that it does bring up questions about what they believe.
Yep.
And obviously, the two worst purveyors of this crap are RBN and GCN, and we the people are another one too. I mean, it's, you know, every time somebody sends me an audio file, I just nearly hurled, about how we're going to take the country back, it's like, yeah, all right. What country was that, by the way? Alrighty. All right, listen, that's it. Thanks a lot for spending some time with us, and we'll work up a second part. I know you got a lot of information in one part and a lot of quotes, a lot of salient quotes, and, you know, I hope you come back and we can do this at your convenience. I hope your schedule lightens up a little bit. That may not be the case, but thanks for taking this time now.
Well, thanks for having me, Biz.
Okay, we'll see you later.
Okay, God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.